There's this word that can land with a thud: forgiveness. For most of us, it just sounds like a huge chore, right? Something we're supposed to do. But what if that whole idea is completely backward? What if forgiveness isn't about letting someone else off the hook, but it's actually about unlocking your own cage? Okay, let's really get into this, because this one shift in perspective could genuinely change everything for you.
We all have them, don't we? Those stories we keep filed away. Stories of being let down, misunderstood, or just deeply, deeply hurt. And they leave a mark. They create this narrative of pain that can just loop and loop in our heads, like a constant soundtrack of the injustice we felt.
And that right there is the great paradox we're going to unpack. It's this wild idea that holding on to a grudge, simmering in that resentment, doesn't really punish the other person at all. Instead, it slowly, quietly builds a prison around us. And before we know it, we find ourselves as both the prisoner and the guard holding the key.
So, to find our way out, we're going to need a map. First, we'll get a real sense of the weight of a grudge. Then, we're going to bust some huge myths about what forgiveness is not. After that, we'll redefine the whole thing as an act of self-liberation, figure out the inner barriers that keep us stuck, and finally walk that path to freedom, one step at a time.
So let's start right there, with the problem itself. What is the real, tangible cost of holding on tight to that pain? I promise you, it is so much heavier than we ever give it credit for. It all starts so simply. A moment of hurt sparks a flash of anger. But if that anger doesn't get processed, if it just sits there, it starts to cool and harden into resentment. And resentment, well, that becomes this toxic fuel for revenge fantasies. But here's the crucial part. This storm inside of us creates real-world wreckage. It shatters friendships, it can break families apart, and maybe worst of all, it just eats away at our own self-worth. We can actually get hooked on our own story of being wronged, because, in a strange way, it gives our ego an identity. A painful one, but an identity nonetheless.
And I get that. I really, really do. This is not about making your pain seem small. Some wounds are just profound. A betrayal from someone you trusted with everything. A loss you can never get back. A deep injustice. The point here isn't to pretend it's easy. It's to ask a really brave question. Is carrying all this weight actually serving me anymore?
All right, before we can build a new way of thinking, we have to clear the ground. We have to tear down these old, broken myths around the word forgiveness, because honestly, these misconceptions are often the very bars of the prison we're trying to escape. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's get this one straight right off the bat. Forgiveness is not about being a doormat. It is not about passively accepting bad behavior or just rolling over. In fact, it's the total opposite. To be able to look your pain right in the eye and choose to release its grip on you, that takes an incredible amount of inner strength. That is you taking your power back.
Forgiving someone is not the same as saying, hey, it's totally okay that you did that. Not even close. It's about saying, what you did is no longer going to have control over my peace, my energy, and my life. You're changing your relationship with the memory. You're not giving a thumbs up to the action itself.
Now, this one is a huge roadblock for so many of us. We get forgiveness and justice all tangled up, but they really operate on completely different levels. Justice is external. It's about consequences, about accountability out in the world. Forgiveness is internal. It's about finding peace inside yourself. You can absolutely pursue justice while at the same time cultivating your own inner freedom.
Okay, so with all that junk cleared out of the way, we can finally get to the real heart of it. It's time to completely reframe forgiveness. Let's stop seeing it as some kind of gift you give to someone else and start seeing it as a key you forge for yourself.
Now, what's so fascinating here is how language can literally shape our reality. In Turkish, for example, one word for forgive can also mean to erase. But there's a much more powerful concept in another word, özgürleşmek, and that means to become free. Just let that sink in for a second. The goal isn't just to forgive, it's to become free. So here's the big takeaway. Stop thinking of it as giving something away. See it as an act of liberating yourself. It's you reclaiming your power from a past event.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? I want you to try thinking of forgiveness as the ultimate act of healthy selfishness. The focus is on you. The primary benefit is for you. You are the one who gets to breathe easier. You are the one who gets to walk out of that prison free and clear.
And hey, the benefits here aren't just some abstract feel-good idea. They are real, they are physical, and they are measurable.
So much research and observation ties releasing chronic anger to things like better heart health, less chronic pain, and even a stronger ability to kick unhealthy habits. This isn't just some spiritual nice-to-have. It's as fundamental to your well-being as what you eat or how much you sleep.
So, if it's so good for us, why in the world is it one of the absolute hardest things for a human being to do? Well, this is where we have to turn the spotlight inward. The biggest roadblocks aren't out there with the other person. They're right here, inside our own minds and our own bodies. So let's meet the main antagonist in our story of freedom, the human ego. Now, the ego isn't all bad. It's the part of us that builds our sense of self. The problem is, sometimes it decides to build our entire identity on a foundation of pain.
So here's the ego's playbook for keeping you stuck. First, it loves being right. Your story of being wronged is the ultimate proof, and it will replay that story over and over for constant validation. Second, it can actually merge your identity with your pain, so you stop thinking something bad happened to me and start believing I am the person who was betrayed. And third, it tricks you into thinking that resentment is some kind of protective shield, that staying angry keeps you safe. From the ego's point of view, forgiving is absolutely terrifying. It feels like dropping your only weapon.
Here's a powerful way to see this in action. Imagine 20,000 fans watching a football game. The game itself is just one set of events on a field. But in the stands, you'll have 20,000 completely different games being watched, each one filtered through that person's loyalties and moods and memories. The exact same thing is true for our lives. An event happens, it just is. But we are the ones who wrap it in a story of tragedy, or injustice, or betrayal. We're the ones who give it its emotional charge.
And that emotional charge doesn't just live in our heads. Oh no. It gets stored in our physical bodies. Think about it for a second. Where do you feel rage? For a lot of us, it's a tight knot in the stomach. And where do you feel deep, profound grief? It's that heavy ache right in the center of your chest. And all those words you swallowed, the things you never said, they can feel like a literal lump in your throat. This isn't just poetry. It's our real, lived experience. So how do we get this stuck energy moving? The goal is expression, not suppression. Crying is an incredibly powerful primal release. So is writing. I mean just dumping every single uncensored thought and feeling onto a page. And there are also specific body-based techniques, like EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's a pretty simple process of tapping on specific energy points on your body while you focus on the feeling you want to release. You can think of it like emotional acupuncture, but without any needles.
Okay, we get the problem, we've totally reframed the goal, and we've identified the inner villain. Now for the best part. Let's see how all of this builds into a practical, actionable path forward. This is how we stop waiting for forgiveness to just happen to us and start actively cultivating it as a skill. And this is absolutely key. Forgiveness is not a button you just push one day. It isn't a single decision you make. It's the natural outcome, the final result, of doing a different kind of inner work. It's kind of like the roof on a house. You can't just put the roof on. You have to build the strong foundational walls first, the ones that will actually support. And these are those 4 walls, the 4 practices that, when we build them up, naturally lead us to a state of freedom. They are acceptance, self-love, self-approval, and the final most important one, self-forgiveness. So the first pillar is acceptance. This is simply about seeing reality for what it is. It doesn't mean you have to like it or approve of it. It just means acknowledging that what happened, happened. It's the conscious act of dropping your end of the rope in that tug of war with the past. You just let it drop. You stop fighting what already is. Next up, we build the true bedrock of the whole structure, self-love. This is the radical practice of recognizing your own inherent worth, a worth that exists completely separate from what anyone ever did to you or what they might think of you. When you are truly filled up with your own love, the actions of others just have way less space to take root and cause that deep pain.
Building directly on that is self-approval. Think of this as becoming your own source of validation. You stop outsourcing your sense of being okay to other people. Their opinions might exist, but they no longer have the power to define you. You become the ultimate authority on your own value.
And that brings us to the final and, for so many of us, the most challenging pillar of all, self-forgiveness. This is where the real liberation happens. It's about forgiving yourself for not seeing the red flags, forgiving yourself for choices you made when you were hurt or you were scared, forgiving yourself for how long you've carried the anger. We often hold ourselves to this impossible standard, expecting our past selves to have the wisdom that we only have today. This pillar is about turning all of that compassion you've been working on and aiming it squarely at yourself. It is the ultimate act of coming home.
And as you practice these things, please remember this. This journey isn't about becoming some perfect, enlightened person who never feels anger. It's a messy human process. The real goal here is progress, not perfection. And the grand prize isn't some shiny halo. It's your own freedom.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. We've spent all this time talking about the prison of the past, but what actually happens when you use that key and you open the door? What energy, what creativity, what joy becomes available to you when it's no longer being drained by old wounds? What does your future get to look like when you choose to be free?